Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to this session, How to Positively Manage Athlete Behaviour. My name is Darren Wenzer. I'm the Head of Coach and Volunteer Development with Little Athletics New South Wales. Look, I hope by the end of this session that you have felt, well, number one, that you've enjoyed the session, and that's a really good sign if people enjoy this session. I hope that you felt you've learned something useful that you can relate to your situation. I hope that you thought it's a worthwhile use of your time. Friday night, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m, keeping out of the wind. But look, I hope that you felt it's very useful. And I hope you feel inspired and energized to go away and actually use some of these ideas that we're going to chat about tonight. And that's what I want to do. I want to get some practical ideas across to you, some practical takeaways when it comes to managing kids' behaviour in a sporting environment. Now, you will have to adapt it to your own situation because we've all got different roles, and feel free to share the role that you do at Little Athletics. I presume we've got committee members, we've got coaches, we've got officials, volunteers of all different, at all different levels. But it'd be really interesting to see in the chat box what you actually do. And there'd be some people, of course, who do multiple roles. So I'm going to try and cover it as best I can for everybody. And look, I do appreciate you coming. It is fantastic. And we are spread far and wide. We just saw that in the chat box, metropolitan Sydney, country areas, some of us locked down at the moment, some of us not. But look, I'd really like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are all situated today. Now, I'm in North Parramatta. I'm in my home at North Parramatta, the land of the Darug people. And I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And of course, extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us this evening. Now, how to positively manage athlete behaviour. Positively manage athlete behaviour. So positive behaviour management, what is it? It's altering the learning environment. It's altering the environment or setting up the environment that you are in to support and encourage the desired behaviour. So it's getting on the front foot, it's being proactive, it's not being as reactive, it's not being reactive to challenging behaviour, I'll call it, misbehaviour. It's getting in first. It's setting up the situation to make it less likely that, negative behaviour, challenging behaviour will occur. Now, in going through these things, I am not trying to pass myself off as a child behaviour expert or a child psychologist or something like that. But just look, besides the work I do at Little Athletics, and I've been in the role for, a quarter of a century now. I'm a level 4 coach, been coaching for 30 years. I'm teacher trained, actually PE and an English teacher many years ago. I'm a dad, I'm a late starter as a dad. I'm a dad to 3 kids aged 5 and under. And my oldest, the 5-year-old, was at Parramatta Little Athletics last year in the under 6s. And I helped co-manage the under 6 age group. And you can imagine that you do need your behaviour management skills for under 6, well, just like any age group when you're age managing. So look, we're not going to cover all the causes and solutions of behaviour today. There's just some things that this is sort of like managing groups in a Little Athletic sporting situation. And of course, we're going to have kids of all different backgrounds and all different abilities and all that type of thing. And I'm going to try and cover as wide a thing as I can, but we may miss some situations, but feel free to pop in the chat box if you've got any questions at all. But the idea is useful, practical tips. Now, let's have a look at this. So dealing with group behaviour in a sporting environment, right? Dealing with group behaviour in a sporting environment can be a little bit like, well, can be sometimes a little bit like this. And can I just make sure everybody's on mute, please? If you can make sure you all got your mute button on, because I can hear a little bit of background noise at the moment. So if we can make sure we're all mute. Thank you, everybody. So it can be a bit puzzling sometimes, can't it? I wonder if anybody's been in this situation. Feel free to let us know. You're going, well, what am I supposed to do? What do I do next? How am I supposed to handle this situation? Can anyone relate to this? It can be a little bit of, oh, I just got to get away from this. I can't stay. I've got to put my fingers in my ears. They're rowdy. They're not listening or whatever. I don't know. I can relate to this. Some people, I'm sure you can relate to this, where you get to the point where I just want to, my steam coming out of my ears when it comes to trying to deal sometimes with group behaviour in a sporting environment with kids. Sometimes it can get a bit overwhelming even. I wonder if anyone's ever been there. We just think, oh, I just can't take this anymore. Look, I hope no one's been here, but of course it can be quite upsetting to some people too, if they just get completely overwhelmed by, how kids are behaving or not behaving or whatever, when they're trying to manage them in their age managing role, the officiating role, whatever it is. Look, and I'd be interested to know if you've been there and actually, felt any of those things. And I can see, just in the chat box, people are telling me the under 6 age manager also, well, we can relate to that age manager, all these different types of things that people are involved with in little athletics. So look, I'm hoping that we can aim to get a little bit closer to this, a bit more confident, a bit more happy, a bit more competent when it comes to managing kids' behaviour. And you may be able to also share some tactics and strategies that you have used. I'd be interested if any of you have teaching backgrounds yourself, and can contribute to the discussion. So hopefully by the end of this session, you feel a bit more happy, a bit more confident, have a few more skills when it comes to managing kids' behaviour. So look, today, what we're going to be trying to do, we're going to talk about two key causes of challenging behaviour, and a bit of a spoiler here, I reckon they're very manageable. Some of these two major causes are very manageable, and you can improve a lot at doing. Okay, so hopefully we can look at those things this evening. We're going to talk about some strategies that you can use to make positive group behaviour more likely. And note, I use the words more likely there. Nothing is 100% foolproof. You may go away and try some of these strategies and they work, and then you try them with a different group or in a different situation, and they may not work. Okay, now, we're also going to talk about, towards the end of the presentation, a 4-step approach to dealing with challenging behaviour. Now, what I mean by that is if some challenging behaviour, some misbehaviour does occur, where do you go then? So you've put all the good things in place that we've spoken about, and you still get some misbehaviour. What can you do? I'm going to give you one possible solution, a bit of a strategy. So I hope that looks interesting to you. I hope if we can do that by the end of the session, I hope you found this session useful. Okay. So why are we talking about this? Why do we actually need to look at behaviour management and work hard at it? I reckon there's 3 main reasons, and feel free to add any that you think I might have missed in the chat box, right? Number 1 is if a group is well behaved, is behaving in a desirable way, there is more time for them for participation in learning. There's less, if there's mucking around, if there's constant interactions between the leader and negative interactions between the leader, I'll call them, and the kids and everything goes a bit awry, well, there's less time for the positive stuff that can happen. So if you can positively manage a group's behavior, they get more goes, they get more listening time, they get more interaction when it comes to participation and learning. Of course, it's obvious. It also allows a safer environment. So if you have a group that you are managing and you have them behaving well and cooperatively, there is less chance at unsafe situations, climbing the discus cages, throwing when they shouldn't be, mucking around with javelins, whatever. I mean, they're just extremes, aren't they? They're less likely to happen, right? They're going to be a little bit more orderly and a little bit more helpful in that area. So I think that's a really important one. And this is so important. It's just as important that the adults, the grown-ups, the leaders out there are having a good time also. Little athletics is a family sport. We want the kids to have a good time, have lots of participation and learning. We want to keep them safe, but we want the age managers, we want the officials, we want everyone to be able to have a good time out there too. So, leader satisfaction is also very, very important. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is just so we're all on the same page, let me go over some things that I'm defining as misbehaviour or as challenging behaviour. Again, feel free to add anything in the chat box if you think I've missed anything. Okay, here we go. So this is very mild, this one, but it can be maddening, can't it? It can be frustrating. You're out in front of a group of the kids and they're just not paying attention to you. You're trying to give them instructions, you're trying to organise them, and they're just daydreaming or distracted or whatever. So that's just one example of challenging behaviour amongst a group of kids. Mild, but frustrating. Were they either deliberately or, just don't follow instructions? So they're deliberately being disobedient, or again, they're not paying attention, lack of attention, and they're not following your instructions. So there's another sort of mildish form of challenging behaviour, but it can really make a session, an event, an activity go pear-shaped if they are just not following your instructions. And it can be so frustrating. That's when the steam can start coming out of your ears. This one here, what I mean by off-task or disruptive behaviour. Off-task means they're just not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So you want them to do this, but they're doing something else. And disruptive behaviour, they're either disrupting your activity, your session as a coach, whatever it is, or they're disrupting other kids. They're distracting other kids. They're making other kids, off task. So that's one that I'm going to look at also. Now, this one can be a little bit annoying, can't it? Disrespect, whether it's intended or not intended. And that little picture there, I think, is a youngster that looks like they're intending disrespect by what they're doing there, but that can be really frustrating too. And sometimes it puts you back on your heels and you think, what just happened then? How do I deal with that? So there's that one. And this can be a bit of a problem too. And I put that right down the extreme end, where it actually makes a session, bullying makes a session, an activity, a sport, an environment, not nice for other kids who were at the end of that bullying. So is there anything else that you would add to that? I thought I'd just put that up so we can all go, oh, that's what we're talking about when it comes to challenging behaviour. Okay, so I'm just looking here. Anything else? No one's added anything in the, people put a few roles in there, what they're doing. But okay, so there is some examples there of what I mean by challenging behaviour. Lack of attention, not following instructions, off task or disruptive behaviour, disrespect or bullying. Now, before we go any further, before we start talking about what are effective behaviour management strategies, let's go over and contrast them with what are not effective, what I don't think are effective behaviour management strategies. Let's have a look at them. Pestering a group. And I'll tell you what, we've all done it, and I probably still do it sometimes. So what I mean by this is, you're saying to a group, sit down, come on, sit down, sit down, sit down. I want you all sit down. Come on, sit down, everybody. You, sit down, you, sit down. I told you to sit down. It is so reactive, and it just will have no long-term effects on the group. It may get them to sit down even just temporarily, but just, repeating an instruction, repeating. If you are having to find yourself to repeat instructions, then you haven't given effective instructions, or you haven't set up the situation effectively. So pestering, I don't think, is a very effective behaviour management strategy. Venting frustration, would you just sit down? It's understandable. I've been there and done that, but it's, again, not a very effective behaviour management strategy. Once you lose your cool a little bit out in front of the kids, I think that it's very hard to strategize your behaviour management, because you just can't think straight. And this, it's related to the venting frustration. But what I mean by this one is, the old, and look, this is so just not accepted these days at all. If you don't sit down, I'm going to, do this, threatening someone. You don't threaten kids. It's just not, completely unacceptable. And it's not effective. It might be effective in that situation right then, but it may not be, effective going down the track. So again, that's not one of the strategies I'm going to be speaking about today or suggesting that you should do. Pleading, oh, please, come on, everybody, sit down. Would you just please sit down? Again, I think you've lost your control there if you're having to do that. Again, not effective. The sympathy vote. What I mean by that is, oh, you're giving me a headache, everyone. Come on, please. Would you just, I'm going to get in trouble. I'm not going to get this job next year as your age manager if you just don't help me out here. Again, it's, you're showing no presence, no command there of the group. And this, ignoring, isn't a very good behaviour management strategy also. Meaning, they're climbing up the discus cage. Well, I don't want to know about it. I don't want to know about it. Okay, I'll just ignore it and it might go away. Look, again, I'm just pointing those out so we contrast with what we're about to talk about. And I am absolutely not saying that I'm perfect. I have been there and probably done all of these things at some stage and may even still slip into them sometimes. I hope not, but I may. I'm just going to check the chat box. So I've seen a few things been popping up there. People just putting up their roles still at the moment, age managers, officials. And a very interesting comment there from Ingrid saying it's hard to know if a child is being diagnosed about something that is causing that behaviour. I agree. Now, again, some of the things I'm going to talk about tonight will work with kids, you know, who might have behaviour issues and things like that. But some of them, it'll be very much dependent on the situation and the child. But if you see those, any questions about those, it's all good, I think, if people understand what I'm trying to say here. But let's go on to, let's get really into the meat of this presentation. Two key causes of challenging behaviour. It is so important, I think, to understand what is causing challenging behaviour, and then it makes it a lot easier to deal with it or to put strategies in place to prevent it from happening or quash it really quickly. Now, these couple of things I'm going to talk about here are very manageable. And I said before is they're often caused by us. And I'll show you what I mean by this. Number one of my key causes of challenging behaviour is the task you have given the child or the situation that they have been put in. You know, and tell me if you've been in this situation. You line 30 under 9 boys up behind a discus cage, all right? And there may be some people chuckling at this. That's not a good situation where you're going to have perfectly behaved kids generally for that time, all right? Under 8, under 9 boys, am I about right there? It's just not a situation that they can cope with very well. We are asking them to do something that they are not, you know, made up to do. And I would love for you, if you've got any other situations that you think are just powder kegs for poor behaviour, put them in the chat box. We can all have a little bit of a chuckle or a bit of a grin. But you can understand what I'm saying is there. So the situation we are putting the kids in, whether it's boring, whether they're not active enough, whether they're too close together or whatever, you know, we have to try and prevent putting them into those situations in the first place. And I'm just going to check the chat box. Now, Ronald, I believe, are you actually saying that it's poor behaviour is even worse when it's windy? That's a well-known thing by coaches and teachers know that very, very well. Okay. Kids being impatient. Oh, there you go. I agree with Ronald. When it's windy, the kids go wild, especially under 9 boys. It is so well known and no one knows exactly what it is. Okay. So that's one thing. And I hope you can understand. And look, seriously, if I say anything tonight that you say I disagree with that, or I'm very skeptical about what you're telling us there, Darren, please feel free to pop it in the chat box and we can chat further about it. Now, the other thing that I think is really something that you need to look at when you're managing kids is your leadership style. Okay, so are you speaking loudly enough? Do you have a commanding enough presence? Have you got a good relationship with the kids that you're trying to manage? All these things, you know, have you, and these things, the task or the situation and the adult leadership style, you know, can go together. Now, as you can see, I am saying that we as the leaders can be responsible sometimes for the poor behaviour that is occurring in front of us. And I think when we recognise that, when we can say, yep, that was my fault, rather than always blame the kids, you put yourself in a stronger position. It's sometimes very confronting to admit that, but I think it's when you say, I actually have control over this situation to make it a better situation, by changing the task or the situation or changing my leadership style or both, then that's a very strong position to put yourself in. And I'm going to give you some practical tips. Okay. Waiting. I agree. Erin just put up that I think that waiting is a huge problem with kids. Waiting is a huge problem and it is something that we need to deal with in the field events at Little Athletics. All right, we need to think outside the square. So I believe if you get bad behavior at the field events, it's a situation the kids have been put in. Kids are not made to line up and wait, you know, and not have a lot of goes. Okay, so we do need to deal with that. Activity time versus downtime, definitely. Thanks for that, Alvin. So preventing challenging behavior. Let's see, how do we, this is just, look, I hope that you'll be interested in this. How can we go about preventing challenging behavior? I'm going to talk about 4 areas. Number 1, winning your athletes over early. And I'm going into all these. Just let me show you an overview of what I'm going to talk about. Win your athletes over early. Number 2, communicate clear expectations, rules, and consequences as early as possible in your relationship with the kids or your interaction with the kids. Number 3, use effective supervision strategies. Supervision is a skill. And I'm going to give you some practical tips on how you can supervise kids really well. And number 4, deliver engaging activities, not those boring, lined up, you know, waiting type activities. So they're the 4 things that we're going to talk about. Okay. All right. And there you go. Michael's talked about a good relationship with the athlete helps. Absolutely, Michael. And Alan, yes, those big fields at the field events at state champs. Good point. Okay. So let's talk about these things. Can these things, I'll be very interested to see if these things, you think these things could, or some of these things could help you as a coach, official, age manager, committee member, whatever. Let's go on to winning the athletes over early. Here are some specific strategies. Number 1, as soon as you have your first contact with the group and as early as possible, take immediate control and establish a presence. Now, I am not saying that you have to be the army sergeant out in front of a group, you know, commanding and yelling at them and everything like that. What I'm saying is your body language is positive and not closed down, and you look like you are the leader. Now, one strategy that I've used for years when going out to schools, I'll be out in the middle of the oval, the next class is coming out for their athletics lesson. I don't wait for them to come over to me. I walk over to them and meet them halfway, take control, and then they follow me. So they straight away see me, positive body language, walk out to them. I'm not, you know, intimidated by them. I'm showing, and I'm just using this strategy where I'm standing up, open body language. But in doing that, what you want to do is you want to look like you want to be there. If you have a group approach you, if you're standing out at an event waiting for them to officiate them, you've got an age manager, if you look like you want to be there, you, by smiling, by welcoming them, by, you know, looking happy, you will start to get them on your side. If you look grumpy, if you look like, you know, you're not happy, your closed body language, all those different types of things, you're not ready to go, well, you know, they're less likely to not be to not be on your side. Okay, so there's 2 things: establish your presence, look like you want to be there by looking happy, smile, and praise that group. Now, it has to be praise that they deserve, but find something to praise that group about as soon as you possibly can. So if I'm at a school and I've seen a group walk out in a nice, quiet way in their 2 lines, I will tell them what a great job they did. As soon as I see them, gee, I really liked how you walked out here, staying nice and quiet. That was fantastic. You ask a group to sit down. If they sit down, or if some of them sit down, you pick out those kids and you say, well done, those people who sat down really quickly. I really appreciate it. All right. I love it when people look at me because I can tell that you're listening. Well done, that person over there. Well done, you. I can see you're looking, well done, thumbs up. So it is praise that they deserve. You don't make up praise. They see straight through it. If you're praising them for something they don't deserve, well, they'll see straight through it. But it is a really, really powerful tactic. So you're looking like you want to be there, you're smiling, and you're giving them positive feedback as early as you can. All right. And this is one that I think is really, really interesting. Establish positive expectations. I use 2 tactics. And some of the teachers laugh at this and people who see me do it. This is just an example. I'll go out to a school. I might have never been to that school before. The first class walks out and I say, hey, I've heard this is a great school. I've heard that people listen well and try hard. And I'm really looking forward to coming to this school. And suddenly they're just going, oh, yeah. I've tried this even at some very stereotypical, you know, gone out to some schools, you know, rough schools, you know, stereotype, you know, rough, let's say, you know, who don't have maybe a greatest reputation. And I'll say that to them and they almost fall over backwards, but you immediately got them on side. All right. So it's a really, really interesting thing to try and do. And another thing that the teachers laugh at that I do regularly is that, the kindergarten kids walk out to the first class and I'll say, kindergarten kids, I love kindergarten kids. They're usually they try hard and they listen well. The year ones walk out. Oh, I love year ones. They are just so fantastic. They usually listen well and try hard. So I'm setting them up for, how I want them to behave by putting in their minds that is what they are, so that is how they're going to behave. Use it. It sounds manipulative a little bit, but gee, it helps. Okay. And also your very first formal interaction with the kids, where you're introducing yourself, whether you're introducing the rules of, if you're an official, if you're sitting them down to brief them on what's going to happen that night as a coach or an age manager or whatever. If you can do it so that you've got their attention, using a nice, clear voice, everybody can hear you, because as soon as people can't hear you, they start to become disinterested. If you can make them not face the sun, if you can, so they're not squinting and losing, contact with you, I suppose. So there's some tactics for winning groups over early. Now I can see there's a whole lot of comments going up in the chat. And it looks like a lot of people seem to be agreeing with what I'm saying. You praise the positive, absolutely. Praise is giving the kids, the feedback, 100%. It definitely works. You do it, Alvin. Yep. Praise effort too, 100%. It's important the kids feel valued for effort. And people are saying that seems like it's all a fairly, okay, it looks like most people agree. And if you don't, please let me know if you don't agree with anything there. But that's number one. So number one of the four, trying to prevent misbehavior, win over your group early, get them on your side. Number two, you saw that I talked a little bit, I put up before, about establishing expectations and rules and consequences. Now, as a training PE teacher many years ago, I was always told at the start of the class to give 3 clear rules. How do you develop those rules, I suppose? Now, as a PE teacher, this is what we were told. When we were going out and doing our teacher training, we were in front of classes for the first time. Our lecturer said, right, what I want you to do is when you go out there, give them 3 rules. So number 1, when you blow the whistle, you want them to stop, look, and listen. Number 2, you want them to put their hand up if they've got something to say. Number 3, you want them to try their very best at all times. I just remember those from 20, 30 years ago. Now, the rules that you give to a group will depend on that group. Because you can imagine the rules that you're going to give to under 6s is going to be different to under 12s, I suppose. And what I think is a very interesting thing to do is to predict what may be the key challenges that group will give you, and then put in rules or expectations or standards to tell them how to behave in that situation. So, for example, under 6s, I told you I age manage the under 6s. I wonder what you think of some of these things you'd put in for under 6s. You hear it at schools all the time. One of mine is keep your hands and feet to yourself. You keep your hands and feet to yourself under 6s. Now, you don't necessarily have to say that to under 12s, or maybe some you do, but you can see what I'm getting at here. I would love if you could let me know what you think are some of the key challenges with particular age groups that you work with. If you work with under 6s, tell me what are a couple of other key challenges that you would have that you may be able to put a rule in to cut it off at the pass, so it's less likely to happen. Okay, so they're all different. Okay, anybody got any ideas there? So I'm saying, think about what you're going to be doing, think about what the challenges may be, and then put in some rules, standards, whatever. Now, you don't have to stand out in front of the group and say, right, now I'm going to tell you 3 rules. You just can say, like tonight, guys, I really want you to keep your hands and feet to yourself. I want you to remind you of that. Everyone remember that? Good, very good. When we're walking around together from event to event tonight at Little Athletics, you stay with me. I should be able to see you at all times. See what I'm saying there? And you predict the challenges that may come. What do we got here? Separating, Michael, the under 17 boys and girls, you reckon, is proactive. Could be. I need ears on high and mouths on low, please, from Ronald. Well done. Well said. I love that. Well, it's an interesting way of putting a rule. Under 11 from Ray, under 11's javelin safety rules from day one. So the safety, how you manage the javelin, I suppose, and things like that, and don't run around with it and all that type of stuff. Okay. I high-five them. Okay, at eye level, John. There you go. Younger ones are all calling out at once. Use the hands up approach. Exactly. Okay. One problem with under 10 girls is that they can say quite mean things to each other. A positive language only. You know, you can say, look, I only want to hear things that are nice. I suppose. Anyone got any thoughts for Erin there? What can you say to under 10 girls who can get maybe a little bit of bullying, maybe, Erin? So one of your rules could be, you've predicted that could be, look, in this group, it's all positive stuff. Everyone, it is all positive stuff. We only say things that are positive and helpful to other people. Anyone got any thoughts on that? Words that can build each other up. Okay. Now, we've got the rules in, but these rules are completely toothless, aren't they, if you don't have consequences? So what are consequences? Well, consequences are, if you do this, this will occur to you. All right, now, I'm a big believer in timeouts. I don't know. There are some educators who tell you that timeouts are against the children's rights and everything like that. I think what you're doing when you time out kids from an activity is removing them from the source of the misbehaviour often. So it may not always be a timeout. It could be if two kids are arguing or whatever, you know, or pushing each other in line, you separate them, don't you? That's removing them from the source. Or you may need to take them away from the activity. I'll be interested to what you hear. Do you have any consequences that you will do, that you will put into place if misbehavior occurs or if one of your rules are broken? Okay, so I'm okay with timeouts, and a lot of people aren't. And timeouts, I mean removing them from the activity, maybe for increasingly lengthy periods. So, and I might talk a little bit about this later on, but if you give someone a timeout, the first one might be for 1 minute just to make your point. Right, I've told you not to do that. Go and stand over there for a minute. You can miss out on the activity for a minute. All right, you can come back in. Don't want to see you do that again. You're right. You know what you did wrong. Okay, come back in. If they do it again, you put them out for longer. If you do them again, we'll do it again. You dismiss them for the night or the session or whatever. Whatever you think is appropriate and what your club allows you to do, your centre allows you to do. What have we got in the chat box here? Get them to put their mobile phones away while coaching or officiating, Colin. Yes. No mobile phones at training. We have him State of Origin teams doing that now, don't we? Alvin, I'm going to talk about creating engaging environments. Start the session with a game or a group activity or an icebreaker or something. We'll talk a little bit about that. Get them all to say one positive thing about each other. Done that with state teams in a way. Very, very good. Great way. Gee, we've got some, I love the interaction here, and I'm learning stuff tonight. That's one reason I love doing these sessions. Older age groups, appropriate, respectful language. Yeah, no, swearing and things like that. I can see where you're coming from there, Kathy. There we go. Just some excellent chat going on in the chat box there. Giving them time to bond as a team rather as individuals, competing against each other. Yeah, I'm very big on the thought of doing ice-breaking activities, learning each other's names early in the season. Helps with bullying, meanness, all those other things occurring. Frustrating when children are misbehaving and parents are standing there watching. A lot of the volunteers do not feel like they should or could say someone else's child. I have no problems doing that, but I can understand people do have that, are a little bit intimidated by that. I can understand that, but it can be done respectfully and in a nice, polite way, to tell you the truth. Okay, so expectations, rules, and consequences. Another way that you can prevent challenging behaviour occurring, and sorry if I've missed anything in the chat box, I will go back to it, but I will keep moving, is effective group supervision. And how do we do that? Now, I mean that if a group is being well supervised, watched, whatever, they're less likely to misbehave and go off task or be mean to each other, because if they're in earshot of the coach or the teacher or the leader. All right, I'm going to give you some tips that I learned as a training PE teacher. Number one, we're always told whenever we were supervising a group of kids, a class or whatever, to stick to the perimeter. You are looking in on the group. Nothing can go on behind your back. So I still do it to this day. Whenever I've got a group at a school, when I'm coaching my own groups or whatever, I'm always moving about on the perimeter so I can see everything that's going on and nothing is going on behind my back. I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. Number two, I was always told to move purposely. And what this means is I didn't just circle around the group, which became too predictable. You would stop, start, retrace your steps, do all those types of things. So the kids, again, it sounds a bit funny, but the kids never knew where you were or where you'd turn up. So they don't know when you're watching, when you're not watching. So you've got a strategy to your supervision, I suppose that's saying. Keep the kids on their toes. So as well as sticking to the perimeter and doing all those types of things, you're interacting with them regularly. So if they're doing an activity or they're sitting down waiting or whatever, You're regularly talking to them and showing them that you're actually watching and you're there. You're doing that well. You're doing that well. Just make sure, yep, remember to sit down. Well done. I like how this, right, well done. And use names and keep them on their toes. So they're thinking that, gee, Darren is always watching. This is similar to the last one. But we were always told as training PE teachers, if you could show that your group, that you had eyes in the back, the old eyes in the back of your head. Now, what I meant by this is that they don't think you're watching them, but then you say something to them. Or so, and one of the most effective ways of doing this is if you're standing on one side of a group and you interact with the kid on the far side of the group, where they actually think that you're not watching, but you are, and they've just got eyes in the back of his head. You know, didn't even know he's looking at me. So it's these little strategies and tactics that are just great. And some of you might be smiling about these types of things. And, you know, some of them sound a little bit manipulative, but they're not. They're keeping a group safe. They're giving good learning time. They're getting the kids behaving in a way that they should be. But that's a bit of a fun one. And scan the whole group. So it's important that if you've got a group in front of you, you're not just looking at what's occurring right in front of you. It's looking, you know, at the whole group. And again, officials, you would know this. It must be, look, I'm not an official, but and you can tell me, it must be very, to be running the event, to be watching for, you know, correct, watching for fouls, for measuring, doing all those things, marking, recording, to also be watching what's going on with Alan, whatever those 24, 23 other kids waiting, you know, whatever they're doing, it's a skill. So it's a really important thing that you just remember to be always looking around and not just looking at what's going on directly in front of you. So there's some good little tips there, and I hope that you find them useful. All right, Jeffrey reckons that I think that the age manager should be able to say something if the behaviour is bad and then talk to the parents separately. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Keeping moving is a bit hard when you're an age manager at officiating a field event. We have a small club, and usually the age manager is also running the event, helping to coach the children. But I'm a teacher and I'm okay with it. But I think a lot of other helpers, yes, exactly. I agree. So there's some really interesting comments in there. What works well at high jump training is giving the kids chalk to use in a designated area whilst they're waiting for their jump. This creates a fun environment during the downtime. I've also heard of a coach the other day. I was on a coaching conversation the other day where the coach is saying that when the kids are waiting at long jump, he makes them play scissors, paper, rock. I thought, great idea. Simple things like that. And here we go. Alvin, you'll be interested in this one. Giving the kids engaging activities. Look, what do I mean by engaging activities? Activities in which they are engaged in. How can we keep activities engaging? Number one, they have a high activity time. So they're not sitting down waiting and listening a lot. They're actually involved. That's pretty straightforward. Number two, it's at the right level of challenge. The Goldilocks principle. Not too hard, not too easy. It's just right. So if something's too easy, they get bored of it very quickly. If something's too hard, they get discouraged very quickly. Look for entertainment elsewhere, all right, which could be anything, pushing, shoving, mucking around, whatever it is, okay? So the challenge has to be at the right level, which is interesting when you've got a big group. It's got to be enjoyable, and enjoyment is different to different age groups. Something that's enjoyable for tiny tots is going to be completely different for under 15s. So you've got to try and have a sense of what's enjoyable for the kids. Choice, you give them a little bit of choice. They have a bit of a say in the activity. So, if they have some type of say in, what ball they use, or, what activity they do next, or some input, then they feel like they've got a bit of input into what's happening and are more, I suppose, engaged in what's going on. And if you give them the chance to be a little bit creative, again, if you ask them to create something within an activity about, all right, kids, we want to keep quiet today while this is happening. We all want everyone sitting down. Can you give me some ideas about how we can best do that? May work with some groups, may won't work with other groups, but you ask them and consult with them. Now, have a look at this. We talked about the lining up at the discus cage early. 30 under 9 boys lined up behind a discus cage. Not a good situation. Poor activity time. Not very challenging while you're sitting there lining up, not overly fun. You've got no choice. You're told to sit there and there's no chance to be creative except by misbehaving. So you can see what some of these field event situations that we set up for some of these kids, why they're not engaged in what they're doing. Quick look at the chat box. Build up a little black book of simple, easy games that works for you. Thanks for that, Alvin. That's fantastic. Sarah, I had a big group of under 9 boys. They like to play duck, duck, goose. Why is that such a... kids love duck, duck, goose, and I just don't get it. But they do when waiting around for events. Filling in time between events, great idea, fantastic. Didn't think it would work, but they're surprised they liked it. I agree, Sarah. I 100% agree. Making the kids feel that their small efforts are valued because some of them can be under a lot of external pressure to achieve higher goals. Thanks for that, Fever. Some very good points there. Okay, conga trains when they are moving between groups. For the younger kids, love it. Under sixes, we were snakes, we were trains, we were meerkats. Don't even ask about that. But yes, when you can sort of keep them together in conga lines or whatever, that is absolutely fantastic. Okay, well done. Some great points there. All right, so moving on, because we do have to move on. Now, for some reason, my slides are not progressing. Let's try something here. I wonder, there we go. There we go. Managing challenging behavior. I was really worried my mouse had battery had run out and I just changed it. So it couldn't have, anyway, we could have been stuck on that slide for the rest of the time. Managing challenging behavior. Now, this is quite interesting. What do you do if you're confronted by challenging behavior? Let me give you a 4-step process that may work in some situations. It does work in some situations. Remember I said before that you shouldn't ignore it? Well, this is something I learned as a training PE teacher. Number one, if it's mild, if it doesn't disrupt the session, if it stops quickly, can you ignore it? Rather than continually nagging kids and, saying you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong, blah, 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 can you watch it? And if it stops, can you just let it go? Like the example is, I'm not talking about two kids punching each other, right? We'll just ignore that for a while, see if it goes away. I'm talking about if two kids are whispering while you're giving an explanation. It's a bit annoying, but it's not that bad. Look, I'll let them go. Okay. If you can't ignore it, a really strong way of dealing with it, and again, if you've got an extreme situation going on, then you're going to jump some of these steps, but can you positively interact with kids that are doing the right thing? So what I mean is, imagine you've got these two kids talking away while you're trying to give an explanation and they're clearly not listening. They're going to miss instructions. You walk over to some kids who are doing the right thing and say, I love how you're listening. Or well done, those people who are listening and have got their eyes on me. That's fantastic. Now, you can imagine that works really well with younger age groups, not so much with older age groups. You've got to be a bit different with how you deal with, say, a group of under 17s, or whatever when it comes to that. But this primary school kids works a treat where you call out the kids that are doing the right things, because suddenly the kids who are not doing the wrong things, you're announcing in a way that something's going on in the background that shouldn't be, and they're not getting praised, and they will stop and off and listen. It can work. If you get to the point where that doesn't work, or you need to step in and say something, then you start your verbal reprimand. But what I mean is that by that is, come on, remember rule number 2 or whatever, what we said before about talking while I'm talking, guys, that's just, I'll just ask you to be quiet, please. All right, whatever. You've all been there and done that. And I'm going to give you a little, some ideas for verbally reprimanding kids and some stages that you can go through. And last, if again, your verbal reprimand doesn't work and they keep doing it, or you've had to warn them too many times, I'm going to talk about this in a moment, you need to apply those consequences. You have to, if you've got consequences and you don't apply them, they are not going to work. So you need to apply consequences if misbehavior is occurring. You just have to. So there's the 4 steps. Ignore, positively interact, verbally reprimand, then apply consequences, and hopefully that'll put an end to it. What can you say for a verbal reprimand? Now, again, I'm stealing this off a teacher that I did my teaching rounds with about 30 years ago, and I still use it. And she said to me this, she was an English teacher, and she said she had been studying this behaviour management, and she'd come up with this. So you see a kid misbehaving, pushing into line, we'll say, under 9s, under 10s, whatever, shoving each other around a little bit. And you walk up to them and say, what are you doing? And that can often be enough to stop them. Now they turn around, they stop and they look and they go, what are you doing? Throw this one in. Why are you doing that? So, excuse me, what are you doing? And it was, why are you doing that? And should you be doing that? No? Okay. Those 3 things, any combination of those 3 things can often be enough to stop because you're not accusing anybody. If you walk in and say, what are you doing? You're not being accusatory to anybody, the child. You're not saying, because you might have you might have seen a situation like a retaliation or something like that, or whatever, you know, and you're just going and you're asking the question, what are you doing? And they have to answer. And the power of this discussion here is you can really get them to admit their misbehavior. If they have been misbehaving, what are you doing? Oh, nothing. I saw you pushing in. Why are you doing that? Oh, I don't know. Should you be doing that? No, I shouldn't be. Hang on. So you know you shouldn't be doing that and you're doing it anyway. So you know you're misbehaving. So you can, and again, it sounds a little bit manipulative, but you know, it's a great little conversation that you can you can have. If your entire group's going nuts, what is often referred to as group chaos, just say you just totally thought this group's out of control. The best thing to do is stop. Blow a whistle if you've got one, sit them down and review the rules. That's about the best thing I can actually say. Like if I'm out with a group and I'm just thinking this whole group has just forgot how to behave, stop, sit down, come in. We're going to review the rules right now and the consequences. I can see a bit of chat going up in the chat box. I've often asked what should you be doing? Yeah, allows them to take account. That's exactly right. That's what I was just saying there, Julian. Allows them to take accountability for their actions. Great point. I tell them to sit, and the one who stands up and moves at the end of the line. Ah, yeah, there you go. Looks like they okay. There's some good stuff there. I often ask them, are you making a good choice here? Love that one too. The whole class time out during chaos. There you go. You sit them all out, Alvin. Interesting. There we go. Sit down with their hand over their lips or something like that, their finger over their lips. All right. So look, there is hopefully an interesting, you know, useful stuff for you in that diagram there. So we're getting towards the end of the presentation. We are approaching 8 o'clock, and I'd like to, if there's any questions at the end, again, from what I've talked about, but I'm just going to go over a bit of a summary here now of some of the stuff we've talked about, and I hope that you found it useful. Here's some extra things for you, some don'ts when it comes to behavior management. Number one, don't give any more than one final warning. What I mean by that is don't sort of ever say, if you do that again one more time, I'm going to sit you out. And then they do it again, and you say, if you do that again one more time, I'm going to sit you out. If they do it again, you say, remember what I said, I'm going to sit you out if you do that again. No, sorry. If you say to someone, if you do that again, I'm going to sit you out, you sit them out if they do it again. Okay. Otherwise, it just becomes ridiculous. Okay. The next one, don't threaten consequences that you can't follow through with. Oh, I've done this before. So you actually, you know, get so sort of fed up with someone's behavior and you say, right, if you do that again, if I see that behavior again, you know, I will make sure you can never register with Little Athletics ever again. Right? Can you even do that? I don't know. I mean, it's ridiculous, because then you've backed yourself into a corner, haven't you, if they keep misbehaving and you look stupid. So just be careful what you threaten kids with. And again, we said you shouldn't threaten them with anything. So when I say threaten, don't say you're going to impart this consequence on the kids if you can't follow through with it. Number 4, don't raise your voice unless absolutely necessary. I can raise my voice without yelling and screaming. So raising your voice is okay, but if you start raising and it sounds like harsh, that's where it gets to a bit of a problem. And sometimes when you deal with behavior in a calm manner, it's a little bit unsettling sometimes for the person who's misbehaving, because if you go ballistic and start to lose it, it's sort of a little bit of a win for the people who are misbehaving in a way. All right. And you're not under control yourself. And again, but avoid being harsh, sarcastic, you know, or belittling participants. And look, again, it can't be so, you know, say to a kid, stop acting like a baby, would you? You know, is very, you know, you feel like doing that sometimes, don't you? But again, you want to keep the kid on your side. If you have to engage with a child and talk to them about misbehavior, you want them on your side rather than them not liking you and then not wanting to listen to you and just thinking you're an idiot. Okay, so you've got to make sure that you keep on their positive side. So what you should be doing is you remain calm and objective. Difficult, I know, but we have to try and do it. Remain calm and objective. Be firm though. So you can be nice, but you can be firm. No nonsense firmness when it comes to dealing with misbehavior. And make it about the behavior, not the person. And I know, Alvin, you'd be very familiar with this. You know, when it comes to the state team, we would always used to say, hey, listen, if we ever have to talk to you about your behavior, it's, you know, the way you're acting. And you know, it's not that we don't like you. It's that we don't like the behavior that you're doing. It's very, very important that you show the kids in some way that it's their behavior or that particular incident that you don't like, rather than you see them as an all the time problem. Okay, so you make it about the behavior, not the problem. And it's always very important that after you've had maybe an interaction with a child, you've sat them out, you've reprimanded them or something, you bring them over a bit later on when everyone else has gone or something. You go, hey, you understand what happened then? You know, I didn't like how you were acting, you know, at that point. I think you're a good kid. I really like you, you know, and you do some good things, but that was just not acceptable. Do you understand? You got it? Yeah. So let's just treat that as a speed hump. When we come back to the next event or when we see you next time, let's move on and we'll start afresh. Got it? Yeah, no worries. High five. All right, whatever, you know. So that's really important, rather than to leave it simmering and you know, open-ended. I think it's really important. I can see a few things going up in the chat box. Doing the good cop, bad cop thing, Alvin. You can make them your PA and give them something constructive to do, Kathy. Yes, you can. And you can show them that you trust them then. Now I'm going backwards here through the chat, so I should be missing it. Okay, there we go. Avoid using the word don't. Colin, that's a very interesting one. Ask them tell them what you want them to do rather than what you don't want them to do. It's a very important coaching point too, where, you know, you say, well, this is what I want you to do rather than this is what I don't want you to do. Very good point, Colin, how you phrase your rules, I suppose, and how you want them to behave. So the things that we've spoken about today is we've talked a little bit about why I think behaviour management is important for learning, safety, and all that type of thing, and our sanity. We talked about some examples of challenging behaviour, so we're all on the same wavelength there. I talked about what was not effective behaviour management to contrast with what I thought was. We talked about two key causes of challenging behaviour. One was the situation we put the kids in, and the other one was the situation, the leadership situation. We talked about strategies for preventing challenging behaviour. We talked about managing challenging behaviour. Remember, I gave you some steps there that I thought were quite useful. So from this point in, I suppose what this session is all about is just starting and encouraging you to start to try and create environments in advance and be ready for challenging behaviour, and predicting the challenging behaviour so that you can cut it off at the pass and we can get on our front foot, so that you can make that positive behaviour, that helpful behaviour, that cooperative behaviour more likely with a group, whether you're an official, a coach, age manager, committee member, whatever you do at Little Athletics. Now, I do really hope that what we've talked about today you found useful, and that you've gone, you know, there's a couple of things that I can go out and use, because that was the idea. We had a bit of an overview, and then there was some really, hopefully some practical type strategies there. Now I can see on the chat box there, I'm going to take the share down so I can still see everybody. Now on the chat box, there seems to be a few things there. Who's putting up the football scores there, Alan? Thanks for the feedback there, Justine. Fine balance. Okay, what's this? It can be better to speak generally about. Oh, okay. So Julian's saying it can be better to speak generally about a behaviour rather than a single kid's out, as it can lead to embarrassment, make the behaviour worse. Very interesting point, Julia. So you're saying that if someone's misbehaving or there's a group misbehaving, you talk to the whole group. You can do that, although some kids sometimes feel they're being unfairly targeted. I'll tell you what, if you sometimes, yeah, but I agree, you rather than embarrass a child, you want to avoid that at all costs. Maybe you can talk to them later on, or take them away from the group. Can I tell you, that kid who is being the smarty pants in front of you and showing disrespect, as soon as you remove them from performing in front of their mates and take them to a side, they lose all of that smarty pantness. Is that even a word? So that's something that, you know, you can also, you know, think about there too. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, everybody, I am going to stop the recording if I can find where to do that. It should be under more breakout rooms. No, I've got it. Stop the recording. So everyone, look, thanks for listening today. And for those people who are watching this in replay, I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you've got any questions, please get in contact with me. Thanks. I hope you, if you're attending, if you're listening to any other these conference recordings, I hope you enjoy those too. So thanks for watching, everybody.